Thanks so much for the invite to be here. My name is Lewis.
I'm Catherine.
And I'm Josh.
And we've been knocking heads over the last 2 days. It's been a privilege to meet so many people with so many great ideas. And one thing that we came through our discussion is the idea of, well, how do we support more of a kind of strategic evidence-based policy around science communication?
Yeah. And so what we've got to is, obviously all of us here want to develop evidence-based projects. But I think when developing projects, a lot of us will go and look for where is the evidence, what works, what have other people done that works, and what have people done that hasn't worked in the past. And there's no point repeating projects that we haven't worked. But I think we're lacking a resource to look for that data, to look for what other people have done and what has and hasn't worked. And sometimes it's difficult to share that data. We'll write an evaluation report, we'll put it on our own website, and then other people who want to run those similar projects might lose that information. So there's a bit of a leaky knowledge pipeline. And so one thing we wanted to do is create this resource.
So we think there is a use and a need for this resource. We've spoken to lots of people here today who think that it would be a really useful thing to have. So it would take the form perhaps of an online archive, hosting these evaluation reports, grey literature, whatever sort of form this might take, in a nice, neat, concise, transferable, useful form with links and signposting to where you can find the more in-depth reports. However, this has been done before. The British Science Association ran the Collective Memory Project, which was essentially what we have just described, and it shut down in 2017. But there does seem to be an appetite for this. So where do we go from here? Well, we think that the first thing we would want to do would be to survey you guys, science communicators. There seems, from what we've heard, to be a want and a need for this, but actually what form is this most useful in? What form would you guys want to be taking in that information? Off the back of that survey, we would anticipate perhaps producing a website that is interactive in some way, maybe having a forum on there to facilitate discussions about the stuff that gets uploaded, maybe mapping, connections to social media and so on, off the back of the information that we get from you. We'd want it to be community moderated, to involve funding bodies, stakeholders, and for them to incentivize the use of this resource early on in the development of new projects.
In terms of another incentive, I guess, it's not necessarily particularly sexy, but actually there's a lot of research out there. And what to me by research, actually, great research, is this is the valuation data. This is information from practitioners. We're not talking about academic level research. We're talking about the kind of very practical kind of nuts and bolts of how you can do this. So action research is much more trendy within the arts world. It's all about practitioner-based reflective learning, cyclic, what can we learn, how can we share that, and then how do we repeat and grow. And so the idea of the building alongside this website, a network, an actual independent review, so people submitting research on a particular theme, we can commission a theme, and given the nature of today, we'd like to focus particularly at the beginning with projects engaging with diverse communities, what practical people can submit these, put these onto the website, and then actually we would do an independent review of this, not us, we will commission that, and then come out with kind of transferable, big picture things that help us as practitioners. I think this is exactly what I've just said. So it's a collaborative approach, develop a summary, transfer action points, hosted on the website. This is the incentive of why people might use a website like this. And in the longer term, the idea that we can actually be a bit more strategic about where are the missing points, how can we support people better, and could we start obviously focusing on lots of different topics, whether that would be working in community spaces or in schools or science festivals. Can we take this kind of global approach?
Thank you. And so in terms of what funding we would need and where the funding would go, initial step is to set up this survey, to survey all of you guys and to set that up. That would be quite low cost ultimately, but then to build the website and to host the website, again, there's not a huge cost, but to build and host this this resource for everybody to go, and also importantly marketing the resource to STEM communicators, to practitioners, for them to be able to find and use this resource. And then in the long term, the creation of the review, and this came from a discussion earlier that could cost about £30,000 to commission that review to take place over a year to be funded. And so, yeah, that's it. There's basically 3 sort of strands: the initial survey, the development, launch, marketing of the website, and the commissioning of the review process.
So we think perhaps we might want to consider there being some level of culture change here. At the moment, there's a lot of focus on novelty, of coming up with new, cool ideas, which is brilliant, but perhaps there needs to be a focus on evidence-based practice, and perhaps this is a way to facilitate that.
And to finish, I guess this absolutely does not replace academic research, but there's so much practitioner experience and knowledge and things that could be helpful in the room. It's not always efficient to do it through conferences. How can we bring that together? And that's what we're proposing in terms of the review. So then that way we can get a global picture of that can help everyone, is accessible for everyone, to be able to support the communities that we want to serve. Any questions? Thank you very much.